Maya Chun sat at the old piano in the school music room. Her fingers moved across the keys like they were dancing. The beautiful sounds of Chopin's music filled the empty room. She had been practicing this piece for 3 months now. Every day, after school, she would come here and play until the janitor had to lock up the building. Maya was 17 years old and had been playing piano since she was 5. Her parents had saved money for years to pay for her piano lessons. They worked hard at their small restaurant in town. Her mother would wash dishes late into the night, and her father would count money at the kitchen table, always hoping they had enough for Maya's music education. At Westfield High School, Maya was known as the piano girl. Other students would stop in the hallway when they heard her playing. Teachers would bring their coffee to the music room just to listen. Even the tough kids who usually made fun of the music students would get quiet when Maya played. Mrs. Rodriguez was Maya's music teacher. She was a kind woman with gray hair who had taught at the school for 20 years. She saw something special in Maya from the very first day. Mrs. Rodriguez had studied music in college and knew talent when she saw it. She spent extra time with Maya, staying after school to help her with difficult pieces. The regional music competition was the biggest event of the year for all the high schools in the area. Students from 50 schools would come to compete. There were different categories like singing, band, and solo piano. The piano solo was always the most watched event. People said it was because piano music could touch your heart in a way that other music could not. Maya had earned the solo piano spot, fair and square. In September, all the piano students at Westfield High had to audition. There were 12 students who tried out. Maya played a piece by Mozart, and everyone knew she had won before the other students even finished playing. Her music was clean and perfect, but it also had feeling. It made people want to cry and smile at the same time. The piece Maya chose for the competition was very hard. Chopin's Ballade No was a piece that even college students found difficult. It was long, about 10 minutes, and had parts that were very fast and parts that were very slow and sad. Mrs. Rodriguez had tried to talk Maya into choosing something easier, but Maya wanted to challenge herself. Every day, Maya would break the piece into small parts. She would practice the right hand alone, then the left hand alone, then both hands together. She would play one page over and over until it was perfect, then move to the next page. Some days her fingers hurt from practicing so much, but she never gave up. Maya's parents were so proud of her. They had never been to a music competition before. They did not know much about classical music, but they knew their daughter was special. Maya's mother would cook her favorite foods to give her energy for practice. Her father would drive her to school early so she could use the piano. Before classes started, the other students at school were excited for Maya too. Her best friend Sarah would sit in the music room and do homework while Maya practiced. Sarah said it helped her concentrate better. The boy who sat behind Maya in math class asked her to play at his birthday party. Even the school principal, Mr. Roberts, would sometimes peek into the music room and give Maya a thumbs up. Mrs. Rodriguez had big dreams for Maya. She thought Maya could get a scholarship to study music in college. There were people from universities who came to the regional competition every year looking for talented students. Mrs. Rodriguez had already called 3 different music schools to tell them about Maya. Maya's practice schedule was very strict. She woke up at 6 in the morning and practiced on the small keyboard in her bedroom for 30 minutes before school. During lunch, she would eat quickly and then practice in the music room. After school, she would practice for 2 hours. Weekends, she would practice for 4 hours each day. The Chopin piece was starting to sound amazing. Maya had memorized every note. She could play it with her eyes closed. She knew exactly when to play loud and when to play soft. She knew when to speed up and when to slow down. The music had become a part of her. Other schools had heard about Maya too. At a practice competition in October, students from other schools watched her play. Some of the other music teachers came up to Mrs. Rodriguez afterward to ask about Maya. They said they had never heard a high school student play Chopin so well. Maya's confidence grew every day. She was not a show-off kind of person, but she knew she was good. She had worked so hard for this moment. The competition was her chance to show everyone what she could do. She dreamed about playing on the big stage with hundreds of people watching. The music room became Maya's second home. She knew where every chair was placed and which piano keys stuck a little bit. She had worn a small spot on the piano bench from sitting in the same place every day. The room smelled like old wood and sheet music, and Maya loved that smell. Maya's parents had already invited their whole family to come watch the competition. Her grandparents were coming from 2 hours away. Her aunts and uncles and cousins would all be there. Maya had never performed in front of so many people she knew, but she was ready. Mrs. Rodriguez had taught Maya not just about playing the notes correctly, but about making the music tell a story. The Chopin piece was like a conversation between Maya and the composer. Sometimes it was happy, sometimes it was sad, sometimes it was excited. Maya learned to make each part feel different with the way she touched the keys. Everything was perfect. Maya had her dress picked out for the competition. It was a simple black dress that her mother had bought for her. She had new sheet music, even though she did not need it anymore. She had practiced bowing to the audience. She was ready to make her school proud and maybe even win the whole competition. Maya did not know that in just 2 weeks, everything would change. She did not know that a new music director was coming to the school. She did not know that all her hard work and dreams were about to be threatened by someone who did not even know her. For now, Maya was happy, practicing her beautiful music and getting ready for the most important day of her young life. Mr. Harrison arrived at Westfield High School on a cold Monday morning in November. He was a tall man with gray hair and a serious face that never seemed to smile. He wore expensive suits and carried a leather briefcase that looked like it cost more than most teachers made in a month. The students could hear his hard shoes clicking on the floor as he walked down the hallways. Mrs. Rodriguez had been told that Mr. Harrison was coming to replace Mr. Peterson, who had retired suddenly due to health problems. Mr. Peterson had been loved by everyone. He was gentle and encouraging with the students. He believed that music should be fun and that every student could learn something beautiful. Mr. Harrison was very different on his first day. Mr. Harrison called a meeting with all the music students. They crowded into the music room, excited to meet their new director. Maya sat in the front row with her hands folded, ready to make a good impression. She thought he might want to hear her play the Chopin piece. Mr. Harrison stood in front of the students and did not introduce himself with a smile like most teachers did. Instead, he began talking about discipline and hard work. He said that the music program at Westfield had become too relaxed. He said that students needed to understand that music was serious business, not just something fun to do after school. He talked about his experience at private schools where students practiced 4 hours every day. He said that competition was tough and that only the strongest students would succeed. He used words like excellence and standards and discipline over and over. The students began to look at each other with worried faces. Maya felt a little nervous, but she was not too worried. She knew she worked harder than anyone else in the music program. She practiced more hours than Mr. Harrison had said students should practice. She was confident that he would see how dedicated she was. After the meeting, Mrs. Rodriguez tried to talk to Mr. Harrison about the students. She wanted to tell him about Maya and how talented she was. She wanted to make sure he knew about the regional competition and how much work Maya had put into preparing. But Mr. Harrison was busy looking at files and schedules. He told Mrs. Rodriguez he would review everything later, for the next week. Mr. Harrison watched the students practice. He would walk around the room with his arms crossed, making notes on a small pad of paper. He never said anything encouraging. When students made mistakes, he would shake his head or make a disapproving sound. The music room, which had always been a happy place, began to feel tense and uncomfortable. Maya tried her best to impress Mr. Harrison. She played her Chopin piece perfectly every day. She arrived early and stayed late. She asked questions about the music and tried to show him how much she loved playing piano, but Mr. Harrison barely looked at her. He seemed more interested in the students who had fancy clothes or whose parents had donated money to the school. Then Brandon Walsh transferred to Westfield High. Brandon was a senior whose family had moved to town because his father got a new job. Brandon had gone to a private school called Westmont Academy, which was known for having rich kids and a strong music program. Brandon was tall and confident, and he spoke about music like he knew more than everyone else when Brandon auditioned. For Mr. Harrison, everything changed. Brandon played a piece by Bach that was impressive but not as difficult as Maya's Chopin piece. But Mr. Harrison watched Brandon with interest. He asked Brandon about his previous school and his music teachers. He seemed to like everything about Brandon. Maya was not worried at first. She knew that the solo spot was already hers. She had earned it in September, and everyone knew she was the best piano player in the school. Mrs. Rodriguez had already submitted Maya's name for the competition. The programs were probably already being printed, but on Tuesday morning, Maya got called to Mr. Harrison's office. She walked down the hallway feeling curious but not scared. She thought maybe he wanted to talk about the competition or give her some advice about performing on the big stage. Mr. Harrison's office was different from how it looked when Mr. Peterson used it. The walls were covered with certificates and awards from Mr. Harrison's previous jobs. His desk was very neat and organized. There were no family pictures or personal items that made the office feel warm and friendly. Maya sat down in the chair across from Mr. Harrison's desk. He was looking at some papers and did not look up at her for a long time. Finally, he put the papers down and looked at Maya with cold eyes. "Miss Chun," he said in a voice that sounded like he was reading from a script, "I have made a decision about the piano solo for the regional competition." Maya smiled and nodded, thinking he was going to give her some special instructions or encouragement. "I have decided to give the solo to Brandon Walsh," Mr. Harrison said. As if he was talking about something as simple as the weather, Maya felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. She could not breathe for a moment. She was sure she had heard him wrong. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Brandon Walsh will be performing the piano solo at the regional competition," Mr. Harrison repeated. "He has more experience in competitive environments. He attended Westmont Academy, which has one of the finest music programs in the state. I believe he represents our best chance for success." Maya felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she tried to stay calm. "But I've been practicing for months. Mrs. Rodriguez chose me in September. I know the piece perfectly." Mr. Harrison leaned back in his chair and looked at Maya like she was a child who did not understand something obvious. "Miss Chun, this is not about who has practiced the longest. This is about who can handle the pressure of a real competition. Brandon has performed in state-level competitions before. He knows how to win." "But I earned this spot," Maya said, her voice getting stronger. "I auditioned like everyone else. I beat all the other students." "That audition was conducted under different leadership," Mr. Harrison said coldly. "I am the music director now, and I make the decisions about who represents this school. I cannot risk having an unproven performer represent Westfield at such an important event." Maya could not believe what she was hearing. Unproven? She had been playing piano for 12 years. She had won every local competition she had ever entered. She had performed at school concerts and community events. How could she be unproven? "What about all my practice?" Maya asked, and now the tears were starting to fall. "What about the piece I learned? What about my parents who took time off work to come watch me?" Mr. Harrison's face did not change at all. "You are being emotional, Miss Chun. This kind of emotional instability is exactly why I made this decision. Competitions require mental toughness, not just technical skill." Maya stood up from her chair. She felt angry and hurt and confused all at the same time. "This isn't fair," she said. "Fairness is not my concern," Mr. Harrison replied. "Excellence is my concern. You may participate in the group ensemble piece if you wish. That might be more appropriate for your current level." Maya left Mr. Harrison's office feeling like her world had ended. The hallway seemed longer than usual, and every step felt heavy. She went to the bathroom and cried for 10 minutes before she could face going to her next class. Mrs. Rodriguez found Maya later that day. She had heard what happened and was furious. She told Maya that she had tried to argue with Mr. Harrison, but he would not listen to her either. Mrs. Rodriguez had been teaching for 20 years, but Mr. Harrison treated her like she did not know anything about music or students. Maya went home that day and told her parents what had happened. Her mother cried and her father got very angry. They could not understand how someone could just take away something their daughter had worked so hard for. They felt helpless and frustrated, like there was nothing they could do to protect their child from this unfairness. That night, Maya sat at her small keyboard in her bedroom, but she could not play. Every time she touched the keys, she thought about the Chopin piece and how it was no longer hers. She thought about Brandon playing her music on the stage where she should have been standing. She felt like something precious had been stolen from her, and there was no way to get it back. Sarah Martinez was Maya's best friend, and she was furious when she heard what Mr. Harrison had done. Sarah had sat in the music room countless times, doing her homework while listening to Maya practice. She knew how hard Maya had worked and how beautiful her playing was. When Maya told her about losing the solo, Sarah's face turned red with anger. "This is completely wrong," Sarah said, slamming her locker shut. "Everyone knows you're the best piano player in the school. Everyone knows you earned that spot." Word spread quickly through Westfield High School. Students talked about it between classes, at lunch, and while waiting for the school bus. Many of them had heard Maya play at school concerts or during lunchtime practice sessions. They could not understand why anyone would replace her with a new student they barely knew. By Wednesday morning, Sarah had an idea. She went to the computer lab during her free period and created an online petition. The title read, "Bring back Maya Chun's piano solo." She wrote about how Maya had earned the spot fairly, how hard she had worked, and how wrong it was to take it away from her. She printed copies and started collecting signatures in the hallway. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Students lined up to sign the petition. Even students who did not know Maya personally signed it because they thought the situation was unfair. The football players signed it. The cheerleaders signed it. The kids who usually got in trouble signed it. The honor students signed it. Everyone seemed to agree that what happened to Maya was wrong. Teachers began to hear about the situation too. Mr. Johnson, the math teacher, had heard Maya play at school events. He thought she was incredibly talented. When he learned what Mr. Harrison had done, he was shocked. During his lunch break, he went to find Mrs. Rodriguez to ask if the story was true. Mrs. Rodriguez was in her office, and she looked tired and upset. She had barely slept since Tuesday. She had taught at Westfield for 20 years and had never seen anything like this happen. She confirmed that yes, Mr. Harrison had indeed taken the solo away from Maya and given it to Brandon Walsh. "It's not right," Mr. Johnson said. "That girl has more talent in her little finger than most people have in their whole body." Mrs. Rodriguez nodded sadly. "I tried to fight for her, but he won't listen to me. He acts like I don't know anything about music or about these students." Mr. Johnson was not the only teacher who was upset. Miss Patterson, the English teacher, had also heard Maya play many times. She remembered how Maya had played at the school's winter concert last year and made everyone in the audience feel like they were listening to professional music. Miss Patterson decided to talk to other teachers about the situation. By Thursday, Sarah's petition had over 300 signatures, but she wanted to do more. She remembered that her older sister had worked for the local newspaper during college. Sarah called her sister and asked for advice about getting media attention for Maya's story. Her sister suggested calling the education reporter at the Westfield Daily News. Sarah was nervous about calling a real newspaper, but she knew she had to try. She practiced what she would say several times before making the call. The reporter, Janet Williams, was very interested in the story. She had covered education for 10 years and had never heard of a music director replacing a student so close to a major competition. She asked Sarah many questions and said she would look into the story. Meanwhile, Maya's parents were trying to figure out what they could do. Maya's father, David Chun, had never been involved in school politics before. He and his wife worked long hours at their restaurant, and usually trusted the school to make good decisions, but this felt different. This felt like someone was hurting their daughter on purpose. Maya's aunt, Linda Chun, was more experienced with school issues. She had served on the school board in another district for 6 years before moving to Westfield. When she heard what happened to Maya, she was outraged. Linda knew how school systems worked and what rights students had. Linda called the current school board members to ask about the situation. She wanted to know if they were aware of what Mr. Harrison had done and whether they planned to do anything about it. Most of the board members had not heard about the controversy yet, but they promised to look into it. The Music Boosters Club was a group of parents who helped raise money for the music program. They had worked all year to pay for new sheet music, instrument repairs, and competition fees. Many of them had children in the music program, and they all knew Maya was special. When the Music Boosters Club learned about Mr. Harrison's decision, they were furious. They had specifically raised money to help send Maya to the regional competition. They had sold candy bars and held car washes all year. The idea that their money would now be used to send a different student felt like a betrayal. The president of the Music Boosters Club, Patricia Wilson, called an emergency meeting for Friday evening. 25 parents showed up, which was more than had ever attended a regular meeting. They talked about withdrawing their financial support for the competition if Maya was not reinstated as the piano soloist. By Friday afternoon, Sarah's petition had over 500 signatures. Students were talking about organizing a walkout or a protest. Some students suggested boycotting the competition entirely. The whole school felt like it was buzzing with tension and anger. Janet Williams, the newspaper reporter, came to the school on Friday to interview students and teachers. She tried to speak with Mr. Harrison, but he refused to comment. She spoke with Mrs. Rodriguez, who carefully explained the situation while trying not to criticize her new boss too directly. The reporter also spoke with several students who had signed the petition. They all said the same thing. Maya was the most talented musician in the school, and it was unfair to replace her with someone who had just arrived. Maya felt overwhelmed by all the attention. Part of her was grateful that so many people cared about her and supported her, but another part of her felt embarrassed and sad. She just wanted to play piano, not be the center of a big controversy on Saturday morning. The Westfield Daily News published Janet Williams' article about the situation. The headline read, "Local Teen Loses Competition Solo to New Student, Community Rallies in Support." The article included quotes from students, teachers, and parents who supported Maya. It also mentioned that Mr. Harrison had refused to comment. The article spread quickly through social media. Parents shared it on Facebook. Students posted it on Instagram and Twitter. By Sunday morning, people from other towns were reading about Maya's situation and expressing support for her. Maya's phone started getting messages from people she had never met. Piano teachers from other schools sent her encouraging messages. Students from other districts said they were rooting for her. A college music professor even sent her information about scholarship opportunities, but Mr. Harrison remained unmoved by all the pressure. On Monday morning, he sent an email to all the music students and their parents. The email said that he stood by his decision and that he would not be influenced by emotional outbursts or social media campaigns. He said that Brandon Walsh would represent Westfield High School at the regional competition, and that was final. The email made people even angrier. Parents who had been willing to give Mr. Harrison the benefit of the doubt now felt like he was being stubborn and unfair. Several more parents called the school board to complain. Mrs. Rodriguez felt caught in the middle of the whole situation. She wanted to support Maya, but she also had to work with Mr. Harrison every day. She was afraid that if she spoke out too strongly, she might lose her job. But seeing Maya so sad and seeing the community so upset made her feel like she had to do something. On Tuesday morning, 1 week after Mr. Harrison had made his devastating announcement, the school board announced that they would hold a special meeting to discuss the situation. The meeting would be open to the public and anyone could speak during the public comment period. Maya felt a small spark of hope for the first time in a week. Maybe, just maybe, the school board would make Mr. Harrison change his mind. Maybe she would get her solo back and everything would return to normal. But she also tried not to get her hopes up too high. She had already been hurt once, and she was not sure she could handle being disappointed again. The whole town seemed to be talking about Maya's situation. At the grocery store, at the bank, at Maya's parents' restaurant, people were discussing whether it was fair to replace a student so close to a competition. Most people seemed to support Maya, but a few people said that the music director should have the right to make his own decisions. As the day of the school board meeting approached, Maya felt nervous and excited at the same time. She knew that many people would be there to support her. She also knew that this might be her last chance to get her solo back. The competition was only 1 week away, and time was running out. The school board meeting was packed with more people than had ever attended one before. The small meeting room at the district office could barely hold everyone who came to support Maya. Parents, students, teachers, and community members filled every chair and lined the walls. Some people had to stand outside in the hallway. Maya sat in the front row with her parents on either side of her. She wore the same black dress she had planned to wear for the competition. Her hands were folded in her lap, and she tried to stay calm even though her heart was beating fast. Behind her, she could hear whispered conversations and the rustling of papers as people prepared to speak. The school board members looked uncomfortable as they took their seats at the long table in front of the room. They had clearly not expected such a large crowd for what they thought would be a routine meeting. Board President Mrs. Anderson called the meeting to order and explained that they would hear public comments about the music program situation, one by one. People stood up to speak in support of Maya. Mrs. Rodriguez spoke first, her voice shaking with emotion as she explained how talented Maya was and how hard she had worked. Sarah spoke next, reading from a prepared statement about fairness and keeping promises to students. Maya's Aunt Linda spoke about due process and the rights of students who had earned their positions through fair auditions. Parent after parent stood up to express their outrage at Mr. Harrison's decision. They talked about their children coming home from school upset about what had happened to Maya. They talked about how the music program had always been a place where hard work was rewarded, not where arbitrary decisions crushed students' dreams. Mr. Harrison sat at a small table to the side of the room. His face showed no emotion as person after person criticized his decision. When it was his turn to speak, he stood up and repeated the same arguments he had made before. He talked about Brandon's experience at private school and his competitive background. He said that emotions should not influence educational decisions, but his words fell flat in the room full of Maya's supporters. When he finished speaking, the silence was heavy and uncomfortable. It was clear that almost everyone in the room disagreed with him. The school board members asked questions and discussed the situation for over an hour. Maya held her breath as they talked about policies and procedures and the authority of music directors. Finally, they announced that they would make a decision by the end of the week. Maya felt her heart sink. The competition was in 3 days. Even if the school board decided in her favor, there might not be enough time for her to prepare properly. She had not practiced the Chopin piece in over a week because it was too painful to play music that no longer belonged to her. When the meeting ended, people crowded around Maya and her family to offer support and encouragement. Many people hugged her and told her not to give up hope. But Maya could see the worry in their eyes. Everyone knew that time was running out. The next morning, Wednesday, Maya went to school feeling confused and sad. She had trouble concentrating in her classes because she kept thinking about the competition that was supposed to be her big moment. During lunch, she avoided the music room because she could not bear to see Brandon practicing her piece. Mrs. Rodriguez found Maya in the library and sat down beside her. She looked tired, like she had not been sleeping well. "Maya," she said softly, "I need to tell you something." Maya looked up from her book, afraid of what she might hear. "The school board is taking too long to make their decision," Mrs. Rodriguez continued. "Even if they decide in your favor tomorrow, there won't be time for you to prepare properly for the competition." Maya felt tears starting to form in her eyes again. She had been trying so hard to stay hopeful, but now it seemed like even hope was being taken away from her. But then Mrs. Rodriguez smiled for the first time in days. However, I have an idea. What if you performed your piece anyway? Not in the competition, but as a special exhibition after the competitive performances are finished? Maya looked confused. What do you mean? I've been thinking about this all week, Mrs. Rodriguez explained. The competition rules say that each school can have one official competitor in each category. But there's nothing stopping us from having you play as a non-competitive demonstration. You wouldn't be scored by the judges, but everyone would still hear you play. Maya felt a small spark of excitement. Would Mr. Harrison allow that? Mrs. Rodriguez's smile became a little mischievous. Mr. Harrison will be busy with Brandon's performance. Sometimes it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. That afternoon, Maya went home and told her parents about Mrs. Rodriguez's plan. Her father was worried that Maya might get in trouble, but her mother thought it was a wonderful idea. You deserve to play that piece, her mother said. You earned the right to perform it. Maya spent Thursday evening practicing the Chopin piece for the first time in over a week. At first, her fingers felt stiff and uncertain. But as she played, the music came back to her like an old friend returning home. By the end of the evening, she was playing better than she ever had before. Friday morning arrived gray and cold. The competition was being held at the Civic Center downtown, a large building with a beautiful auditorium that seated over 1,000 people. Schools from all over the region had been arriving since early morning, with students carrying instrument cases and nervous energy. Maya arrived with her parents and Mrs. Rodriguez. She was not officially part of the Westfield team anymore, but Mrs. Rodriguez had arranged for her to have a backstage pass as a student assistant. Maya wore her black competition dress and carried her sheet music. Even though she had memorized every note, the auditorium was filling up with families, friends, and music lovers from across the region. Maya peeked through the backstage curtains and saw hundreds of people taking their seats. She noticed that a large section in the middle was filled with people wearing small blue ribbons. Her heart swelled when she realized these were her supporters from Westfield. Backstage, the atmosphere was tense with competition nerves. Students from different schools warmed up on practice pianos, ran through difficult passages one last time, and tried to calm their pre-performance jitters. Maya stayed in a quiet corner with Mrs. Rodriguez. Away from the main group. Mr. Harrison arrived with Brandon and the other Westfield students. Brandon looked nervous as he warmed up on one of the practice pianos. Maya could hear him playing pieces of her Chopin piece, but something about his performance sounded mechanical and cold. The notes were correct, but the emotion that made the piece beautiful was missing. When it was time for the piano solo competition to begin, Maya watched from the wings as student after student took the stage. Some played beautifully, others made mistakes, but all of them looked like they belonged there. Maya felt a pang of sadness thinking about how she should have been among them. Finally, Brandon's name was called. He walked onto the stage looking confident, but Maya could see his hands shaking slightly as he sat down at the grand piano. The auditorium grew quiet as he began to play the Chopin piece that Maya knew so well. Brandon's performance was technically accurate. He hit all the right notes and played at the correct tempo. But there was something missing. The music sounded empty, like someone reading words from a book without understanding their meaning. Maya could see people in the audience, shifting in their seats, looking bored or confused. When Brandon finished, the applause was polite but not enthusiastic. Maya could see the disappointment on Mr. Harrison's face as he realized that his safe choice had not impressed anyone. The judges made their notes and prepared for the next performer. As the competition continued, Maya felt her nervousness growing. She knew that soon it would be time for her to take the stage for her unofficial performance. Mrs. Rodriguez had spoken to the competition organizers, who had agreed to let Maya play as a special exhibition after all the scored performances were finished. When the last official competitor finished playing, the head judge stood up to make an announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special treat for you today. We have an exhibition performance by Maya Chun from Westfield High School. Playing Chopin's Ballade No. 1, the audience seemed puzzled by this unexpected addition to the program, but they settled back into their seats. Maya walked onto the stage feeling like she was in a dream. The stage lights were bright and warm, and she could feel the attention of hundreds of people focused on her. Maya sat down at the beautiful grand piano and took a deep breath. She placed her fingers on the keys and began to play the piece she had lived and breathed for months. From the very first note, something magical happened. The music that had sounded empty when Brandon played it now came alive with emotion and power. Maya poured her heart into every phrase. All of her frustration, sadness, and love for music flowed through her fingers into the piano keys. The audience seemed to lean forward in their seats, captivated by the transformation they were witnessing. This was not just a technical performance. This was music that told a story and touched souls. The standing ovation for Maya seemed to go on forever. People in the auditorium were not just clapping, they were cheering, whistling, and calling out words of encouragement. Maya stood on the stage, overwhelmed by the response to her performance. She had never experienced anything like this before. The applause was so loud that it echoed off the walls of the Civic Center. As Maya finally left the stage, she was immediately surrounded by people who wanted to congratulate her. Students from other schools came up to tell her how beautiful her playing was. Parents from different towns said they had never heard a high school student play so well. Even some of the judges approached her during the break between events. Judge Patricia Stevens, a music professor from the State University, was the first to reach Maya backstage. "Young lady," she said with a warm smile, "that was absolutely magnificent. I've been judging these competitions for 15 years, and I have rarely heard such a moving performance." Maya felt her cheeks turn red with embarrassment and pride. "Thank you so much. I was just playing from my heart." "That's exactly what made it so special," Judge Stevens replied. "Technical skill is important, but music without emotion is just noise. You have both technical ability and the rare gift of making people feel something when you play." Another judge, Mr. Robert Chun, no relation to Maya, joined the conversation. He taught music at a prestigious arts high school in the capital city. "Maya, I would like to talk to you and your parents about some opportunities that might interest you. We have a scholarship program for exceptionally talented students." Maya's parents, who had been watching from nearby, came over with tears of joy in their eyes. They could hardly believe what they were hearing. Scholarship opportunities were something they had dreamed about but never dared to expect. Mrs. Rodriguez appeared at Maya's side, beaming with pride. "I told you that college recruiters come to these competitions," she whispered to Maya. "This is even better than winning the official competition." But the most important visitor came a few minutes later. Dr. Margaret Wilson was the head of the music department at Riverside University, one of the most respected music schools in the country. She had been in the audience as a guest of the competition organizers. "Miss Chun," Dr. Wilson said, extending her hand to Maya, "I came here today expecting to scout a few promising students. I did not expect to discover someone with your level of talent. Would you be interested in visiting our campus? We have a full scholarship program that I think you would be perfect for." Maya felt like she was dreaming. A full scholarship to a major university? Her parents looked at each other with amazement. They had worked so hard to pay for Maya's music lessons, never imagining that their daughter's talent could open doors to a future they could never have afforded. Meanwhile, on the other side of the auditorium, Mr. Harrison was having a very different experience. As the competition continued with other events, people kept approaching him with barely concealed anger and disappointment. Parents from Westfield who had supported the music program for years were telling him exactly what they thought of his decision. Patricia Wilson from the Music Boosters Club confronted Mr. Harrison directly. "How could you not see what we all just witnessed?" she asked him. "How could you replace that level of talent with a mediocre performance? Do you have any idea what you almost cost this community?" Mr. Harrison tried to defend his decision, but his words sounded hollow after everyone had heard both Brandon and Maya play the same piece. The difference in quality had been obvious to everyone in the auditorium. Brandon had played the notes correctly, but Maya had made the music come alive. Several school board members were in the audience that day, and they were getting an earful from angry parents and community members. Board President Mrs. Anderson found herself surrounded by people demanding to know how someone like Mr. Harrison had been hired in the first place. The local newspaper reporter, Janet Williams, was busy interviewing people and taking notes. She could see that this story was becoming much bigger than just a school district controversy. The video of Maya's performance was already being shared on social media, and people from around the country were commenting about the injustice of her situation. As the competition wound down and awards were presented, Maya learned that Brandon had placed 7th out of 12 competitors in the piano solo category. It was not a terrible showing, but it was far from the excellence that Mr. Harrison had promised. Several people noted that if Maya had been allowed to compete officially, she almost certainly would have won first place. The drive back to Westfield was like a celebration parade. Maya's parents could not stop talking about all the opportunities that had suddenly opened up for their daughter. Mrs. Rodriguez kept saying how proud she was and how this was the best day of her teaching career, but the real celebration was waiting for them at Westfield High School. Word of Maya's triumph had spread quickly through social media, and a crowd of students and parents had gathered in the school parking lot to welcome her home. They had made signs that said, "Maya is our champion, and real talent can't be hidden." Sarah was the first to run up and hug Maya as she got out of the car. "You were amazing," she shouted. "Everyone is talking about your performance." The video already has thousands of views online. Maya was overwhelmed by all the attention and support. She had never imagined that so many people cared about her music. Students who had barely spoken to her before were now telling her how proud they were to go to school with someone so talented. The celebration continued into the evening, but Maya was exhausted from all the excitement. She went home and sat at her small keyboard in her bedroom, but for the first time in months, she did not feel like practicing. Instead, she just sat quietly and thought about everything that had happened on Monday morning. Maya returned to school feeling like everything had changed. Students stopped her in the hallways to congratulate her. Teachers who had heard about her performance told her how proud they were. Even students from other schools were sending her messages through social media, but the biggest change was with Mr. Harrison. Over the weekend, the school board had received dozens of phone calls and emails from angry parents and community members. The board members had also seen the video of Maya's performance and Brandon's performance, and the difference was undeniable. On Tuesday morning, Mr. Harrison called in sick to work. On Wednesday, he called in sick again. By Thursday, rumors were spreading that he was looking for another job. The pressure from the community had become too much for him to handle. Mrs. Rodriguez was asked to take over as interim music director while the school board figured out what to do next. Her first act was to call Maya into her office, not to deliver bad news this time, but to talk about the future. "Maya," Mrs. Rodriguez said, "I know this has been a difficult few weeks for you, but I want you to know that something wonderful has come out of all this controversy." Maya sat down in the chair where she had received such devastating news just 2 weeks earlier. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. "Dr. Wilson from Riverside University called me yesterday," Mrs. Rodriguez continued. "She wants to arrange for you to audition for their early admission program. If you get accepted, you could start taking college music classes while you finish high school." Maya felt her heart racing with excitement. Early admission to college? She had never even dared to dream about something like that. "There's more," Mrs. Rodriguez said with a smile. "2 other universities have called asking about you, and the State Music Teachers Association wants to feature you in their newsletter. You've become quite famous in music education circles." Maya shook her head in amazement. "I just wanted to play my piano piece in the competition. I never expected any of this to happen." "That's what makes you so special," Mrs. Rodriguez replied. "You didn't play for fame or recognition. You played because you love music, and everyone could hear that love in your performance." By the end of the week, Mr. Harrison had submitted his resignation. The school board accepted it immediately and issued a public apology to Maya and her family. They promised to conduct a more thorough search for the next music director. With input from teachers, students, and parents, the Music Boosters Club decided to establish a scholarship fund in Maya's honor. They wanted to make sure that other talented students would have opportunities to develop their musical abilities. Regardless of their family's financial situation, Maya received letters and emails from music teachers and students around the country who had seen her performance online. Many of them shared their own stories of overcoming obstacles and standing up for what was right. Maya realized that her experience had inspired other people to fight for fairness in their own situations. A month later, Maya auditioned for Riverside University and was accepted into their early admission program with a full scholarship. She would be able to take college music classes during her senior year of high school and then transition to full-time university study, but perhaps the most meaningful moment came during Westfield High School's spring concert. Maya was invited to perform as the featured soloist, and she chose to play the same Chopin piece that had started the